I became aware of Eneheo's witness testimony back in 2023 through a German man named Harold Brems, who is part of an organization that tries to get justice for people exposed to what is known as organized stalking and electromagnetic harassment, among other covert crimes. Eneheo's story is an example of how some people are being illegally targeted in the Western society by a network of criminal groups as part of the war on terror, most likely due to the fact that they are placed on a watch list for numerous reasons. In this interview, we will dig deeper into Eneheo's testimony and current life situation and show evidence of the crimes she is exposed to. It has not been easy making this interview, and we've had a lot of troubles both technically and otherwise in the process. But before we begin the interview, there is something Ene would like to mention, since it's important for viewers to know why we're making this interview and why it has relevance to them.
I would like to start by saying I'm a private person. So when I step forward, it's because I want the general population to know about these crimes that can be almost impossible to see if you're not exposed to them. Crimes that are also called the shadow war and that are going on in Europe and the Western world right now as we speak. So I'm not doing this to get sympathy from people, and this has huge consequences for me to go public with these crimes. While we were editing this video, I ended up at the hospital again. This is not the first time. And a last comment I would like to make before we begin the interview is the fact that a lot of this interview will be about organized stalking. However, as I see the world today, our biggest issue as humanity is the wireless society or the surveillance society, and these wireless signals that can be targeted against the human body and used as a weapon. So this is something we really have. It's a kind of an invisible shadow war, and we have to address this issue. And that is why I go public. I really hope people understand the importance of what I will try to show with the documentation we have been using in this interview.
Things really started to escalate in your life in 2016.
Yes.
And because of those circumstances, you decided to write a book about what you were experiencing, which is internationally known as organized stalking.
Yes.
And also, it's also called being a targeted individual. You're a target of crimes that we're gonna go into in detail in just a minute. And in your witness testimony, you decided to write a book about your experiences. And in your witness testimony, you start out explaining that you made a FOIA request to our secret service in Denmark. Why did you do that?
As you said, I had been exposed to what is known as organized stalking for years back then, and it very, very intense, very, very violent crimes, not physically, more intimidation, surveillance, stalking, harassment, and I had begun to document these incidents, among them are shooting incidents, and I have gone to the police numerous times back then already, and realized that no matter what evidence I came with, the police were doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And that was strange, because I was in a very, very desperate situation. We are going to go into that later, but I very shortly after began to go in and out of hospitals, but that is something we're going to go back to later on. Then I had to start my own research, because I was on my own. I realized I was totally on my own.
Yeah.
And through other people internationally, mainly in the US, I learned that you are not, if you are on a watch list, and I'm talking about the war on terror now, you lose your legal rights as a citizen. So I thought, well, this sounds like what I'm experiencing. I'm exposed to undescribable crimes, and they are organized, so we are talking many people pursuing you, and the police don't care.
So how did you notice, sort of for the first time, that you were a victim of organized stalking?
Well, that's a gradual process. But when it really hit me, it was late 2016. And I had been stalked for 6 years back then in advance. So I connected all of these incidents with this person who, after I moved, began to come to appear in my new neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I thought it had to do with him, which it also did, but I didn't at that time understand it was a lot bigger. First of all, you start to notice that people are standing outside your building watching you through your windows. Different people, not just passing by and getting eye contact, but actually watching you, just standing outside, looking inside your windows. Then I started to notice that a lot of changes was going on in the apartments around me, and new people were moving in, whether they were like renting the apartment or befriending the person next door and stuff like that. And they were all kind of the same types. They were young, like, I don't know how to describe them, but like street guys with hoods and like that, and having a very bad behavior.
Yeah.
I was living in a building for people who owned their apartments, so they were kind of sticking out as being odd. And at the same period, I started to have issues with my phone and my computer, like cyber criminality. And when I was moving around, I started to notice people following me wherever I went, and not the same person every day, but like if I went for a walk like around Copenhagen, I would notice the same person walking around after me. So you can actually not miss it. It's very obvious that you're being stalked and you're being surveilled and you're being harassed.
To make it more concrete for people, you write in your witness testimony, there is an episode where you are going for a walk in, I don't know what that's called. There are a couple of lakes in Copenhagen, and you notice someone is stalking you.
Yeah, that's the first time I realized I can't deny it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a point where you can't deny it anymore, and that was on this walk because I had to get out of my apartment because things started to become very unbearable when I was at home due to the people around me. And we're going to go into this phenomenon called electromagnetic harassment later on, but that is still too early in the process. So I started to walk around and just to get out of my apartment, because it's pretty intense when you are all of a sudden being a subject of organized crime.
And just to get just to go back to the stalker real quick.
What, the first one?
Yeah, the first stalker. So you write in your testimony that you actually approach him, you confront him, and you go to the police, and you ask for their help, and in the end they contact this stalker.
Yeah.
And what does he say to you when you approach him and confront him with the fact that he's stalking you?
Well, I don't approach this person because I have no relations to this person. This is a character from my neighborhood, a very strange art character who out of the blue began to stalk me, and now we are back in 2010. And it just exploded from one day to the other. And that is also, no, I won't go into that now. And so I didn't know him. So I didn't say anything to him. And I waited. I was like, well, if you just ignore him and you wait, he will disappear by himself, which he didn't. It was a daily event, and that's how it began, actually, with the stalking and surveillance and stuff like that, harassment. And then I went to the police, and they went. That was early. We're back in 2011 now. They went to talk to him, and he completely denied everything. That is the problem. If there's no physical confrontation, you can just deny it. Because it's a word against word. And and then they left, and then it exploded for real, and then he became really pissed off.
And then, as you mentioned, people, your neighbors, the neighboring apartments, the people started to change, and it was
back in 2016.
And you, at one point, you invite a couple of your friends over for a sort of sleepover, just to get, I guess,
evidence.
Evidence that it's not you just making this up. It's actually, it's your friends can actually also acknowledge that they thought it was strange as well what was going on.
Yeah, they did. But what they said to me is, well, that's just criminals, and it has nothing to do with you, and that just because. One of the things that changed back then was that during the night, a lot of activities started to happen in the apartments around me, which is kind of odd in itself. And you could hear furniture being moved around especially the apartment above mine, and people walking around and stuff like that. So the explanation was, when I had outsiders coming to experiencing what I was experiencing, that this is just criminals. It's criminal activity, but it has nothing to do with you. Because and our belief system is a very important part in that, and has been one of my big issues, because people cannot believe, why should anybody target you, Anna? They couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense. So they had all kind of other explanations, and so that was what I got out of that.
And things started to escalate, and things started to turn so bad that you decided to sell your apartment. And move into your car. Sleep in your car. Yeah.
It began late 2016, and in the summer of 2017, I put my apartment for sale because anyway I couldn't stay in it due to the harassment.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay in my apartment. I was becoming physically sick. I was going in and out of hospitals, so it was quite severe.
Yeah.
And then I bought a car, and I was on the run for almost 2 years before I bought this place where we are now.
Yeah. When you were living in your car, you also describe, and you actually have a footage that we can show in just a moment, of a couple of, I don't know, thugs, gangsters, two young people following you around in a roundabout and actually harassing you.
Og så sidder jeg her, og hvad holder der bag ved mig nu? Der holder som en bil. Det er så voldsomt, det er i Danmark dags dato. Du kan ikke være nogen steder, uden de er lige 5 minutter fra dig højst. Højst. Nu skal vi se, hvor langt de skal med mig her. Okay, det er spændende det her. Hvad fanden laver du, mand? Hvad fanden, mand? Hvad satan? De går jo helt amok, mand. Jeg tror, at vi skal have fat i politiet her. Så kører vi tilbage her. Sådan. Det er dejligt.
And you also have in your book, you write about when you, I think this was at a later point, but I think it's also quite interesting that when you sought help in psychiatry, you wanted to get some help. You had an incident, I think, if I remember correctly, when you were going to the psychiatric facility to get help, that people from sort of the gang stalking community, you could actually hear them trying to figure out where you were. You had some incidents there you describe in your book, like where did she go, stuff like that, where you actually...
Oh yeah, well that was quite early in the beginning. That was back in the beginning of 2017, because this is it's kind of a grenade shock you are having. You're being completely bombarded with this agenda, this kind of crimes. So already in the beginning of 2017, I went to the psychiatric institution voluntarily because I was completely desperate. The police didn't want to help me. My friends thought I had become insane and had all kind of other explanations for what was going on. And I was in a state of shock, and health-wise I was also very, very much affected by the situation. So I was like, okay, I need to sleep. I hadn't been sleeping back then for 3 weeks, more or less. So I said, I have to sleep now because otherwise I'm going to collapse physically. So I wanted to escape from my apartment without them knowing me leaving. That was before I knew how wonderful a tracking device a phone is. So I had still a lot to learn back then. And so I tried to escape with my phone in my bag, by the way, and hide in a yard, because they start to patrol. As soon as I left my apartment, cars started to patrol around my area with these fogs inside. So I hide in a yard, and through the gate to the street I could hear them holding still, and because it was still summer, so the windows were down. No, it was not summer, it was winter, sorry. But anyway, the windows were down. So I could actually hear them communicate inside the car and talking about where I went. I had managed because I had hidden myself.
Yeah.
So that's true. And then I went to the psychiatric hospital, and of course they knew exactly where I were. And it was a desperate decision in a desperate situation. And I went there, and I was there for 2 weeks in an open facility because I just didn't know what to do. So I was actually helping in the process of digging my own grave, can you say, in the process, because you are completely out on a limb. You have no options. Nobody wants to help you. Nobody believes you. And you are not only being stalked and surveilled, you are also being what is known as electromagnetic harassed, which we will go into, because already in April 2017, I began going in and out of hospitals due to health issues in that connection.
Yeah. And what did the people say, like the doctors and the other employees at the psychiatric facility? How did they greet you, and what you were telling them? What you were
they thought I was completely insane as well.
Yeah.
And in the beginning they were like, you must be schizophrenic, you must be paranoid schizophrenic, you must be... That was the first 2 days. And then I ended up in an open... I have never been in a closed institution. I have never been in a psychiatric hospital before or after. Only these 2 weeks. And that was a desperate act.
Yeah.
Because I just needed to sleep. When you have no options, you do desperate things.
Yeah.
Yes, if you are in a desperate situation, you have lost your legal rights. Nobody wants to help you. Even the police don't want to help you, even if it's obvious what is going on. And your friends and families think you have become crazy, and you haven't slept for 3 weeks. You have really no options.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt forced to go to this place, the mental institution. And I realized as soon as I arrived that this was a big mistake. And but I only were there for 2 weeks in another facility, and they thought what I was saying was crazy.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and because when I read in the journals, it says she thinks people are stalking her. She thinks people are going to shoot her. Well, I have evidence for that. But in the journal, it starts as if I'm insane.
Yeah.
So that's what they thought.
Yeah.
But in the end, I was there for 2 weeks, and they were like, "Well, we can see you are nicely presented. You're not psychotic. You are totally grounded. But what you are telling us is simply too insane. You must. So therefore, we have to give you some kind of diagnosis." Which in Danish is called single paranoia, mainly because I was functioning that well and I wasn't psychotic. Well,
yeah.
And they didn't even, and nobody wants to look at these evidence.
Yeah.
So they are kind of in their own narrative, and they don't want to how do you say, challenge their own perception of what is going on.
Yeah.
So it's just written off as a mental illness.
For those who don't know, what is organized stalking?
Organized stalking is a network of people working together to target specific people. And the means are, as I told earlier, physical stalking, but it's also cyber criminality, surveillance, physical surveillance, intimidation, harassment. And the harassment can both be, in the beginning, people are standing outside my window, like waving with their arms like that in the night, as part of this psychological warfare, and jumping in the floor above me like boom, 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 in the middle of the night, just to intimidate me, I suppose. And then there's the phenomenon electromagnetic harassment, which is by far the worst of these, how do you say, covert technologies and means. And it's an international phenomenon. In the beginning, mainly done by criminal groups. And then it just grew from there, but mainly criminal groups, organized crimes, cults, neo-Nazi groups, and they are all connected. They don't necessarily know each other. They are connected to the group, and these groups are connected in a network. And then you are being exposed, as also in the beginning. When I started to have this cyber criminality, my email, among other things, I suppose, started to pop up on dark web, which I have documentation for. So, and I started to have all kind of messages that were not for me, clearly criminal messages related to drugs and stuff like that on my phone, and it was just insane. And so it's a network of people working together to harass you. And if you read David Lawson, who used to investigate this already back in the 90s in the United States and in Canada, the purpose is to target specific people and discredit them, break them down mentally, financially, health-wise, in all possible ways. And as he says in his books, the end goal is to kill the target. So so that could explain why I started to go in and out of hospitals already back in 2017.
And if we take it sort of step by step, like gradually for people, you have thankfully, fortunately, you have collected evidence of a number of examples of organized stalking that we can show people now. So the first one is at your job. You worked at, I think it's called Children's Rights Organization in Denmark. Could you explain what happened there?
Yeah, I had just finished my master thesis at the university in psychology. I used to be a school teacher, and then I took a master in psychology, and I started to work on this children's rights organization as a advisor who talked to children on the phone. And I was going to work, and I just wrote to my employer. I don't know what it was about. It was just some questions I had about my work. And she says, and she answered me, and then on email, and then she says, by the way, we have received an anonymous phone call from a man telling us that you are dealing with severe mental issues yourself, and that you're going in and out of psychiatric facilities. So we have to have this talk before you go to work. And he did it. He wrote to them. No, he didn't write them. He called them. That was his best intention, because he didn't think it would be proper for me to counsel, to talk with the young children about the issues
since I had issues myself.
Yeah.
So very, very evil, very, very mean. That's just one of their tactics. So, and then I talked to my employer, and we settled things, and I could continue if I would, but I chose to stop myself because my reputation was smeared. Do you say that, smeared?
Yeah, humiliating.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah.
They would always question, if I continue at that place, they would have been having this in the back of their head, questioning me as a person and my mental stability. So I chose to stop myself. So that's part of one of the tactics.
Yeah, that they went to your job and told you
But this has completely ruined me. Financially, I can't have a job. My health is falling apart. And there's all the social things about my family and friends. In the beginning, they didn't believe me, and then I started to have more and more evidence, and they could see, okay, this is actually happening. So instead of this barrier between me and my family and friends, due to they didn't believe me, now they start to become afraid of me. Their relations to me, because some of my friends, I have also witness testimonies from several of my friends who had been exposed to something in this nature due to, according to themselves, their relation to me.
Yeah.
So it has really affected all parts of my life by now.
Yeah. And you also have another example, and that sort of aligns with the fact that you just mentioned before, that your contact information, your email address, was found on the dark web, which we can showcase, or we have showcased. And then someone made I think it's called on an escort service or prostitute service.
That's true.
They made what is that called? Like a sex ad, and then you got
my name and number.
Yeah, and then you got a very interesting phone call from
I did.
someone.
Kan du gentage det igen, for det bliver altså nødt til at slå op. Annonce, like.
Annonce, like. Odense. Det er sådan et escort, du ved. Bluders, ikke om. Lad os bare kalde det det.
Hold da op. Det må jeg nok sige.
Det er rigtigt. Og jeg tror jeg bare på et nummer, jo. Og så jeg da lige dig, men det så bare ikke.
Hold da fest. Hold da fest.
And then you also, you've mentioned before, gaslighting.
Yeah.
Someone enters your apartment, I think, in that case, your private area, and then they, could you explain your experience with gaslighting? What happened?
Well, that was also back in the beginning, back in 2016, where everything started to change around me. The life in the apartments around me, the fact that I was being monitored in my apartment, the fact that I was being stalked and surveilled when I was moving around, besides my health going rapidly down, and I couldn't sleep at night and stuff like that. Sorry, I lost the question.
Your experience with gaslighting.
Oh, okay. At the same period, I could see that people have been inside my house, and one of the very clear signs were that somebody had been tampering with my food in my fridge, meaning that when I came home, food that I had bought would suddenly be opened.
Yeah.
But it was so early in the process, this was early 2016, I simply couldn't understand it. Yeah. Your mind is puzzled. It tried to make logical explanations, because that is before the stalking. That is how it actually started in early 2016. So you try to come up with logical explanations. And so I started to doubt the store where I bought my food, because apparently somebody had opened it. So it must have been when it was in the store.
Yeah.
And that was how it started. And it went on for weeks. And today I know that, I don't know it, but this is what I believe is primary way how they got what we're going to go into, neurotechnologies or nanotechnologies or artificial life in a broader term into my body. I was actually digesting it through my food.
And then there is also a very scary incident. I believe it was Christmas. Was it Christmas Eve?
With the brick.
Where you were driving on the highway, very high speed, and then someone threw a brick. What looked like a brick. Could
was
you
a brick.
Describe the incident.
Yeah, this is Christmas Eve 2020, and I'm going I'm going to Copenhagen to have Christmas Eve with families, and in advance I've been stopped by criminals, clearly criminals, on the highway. And so I have a dictaphone. I often record what is going on if there's incidents. So I was sitting with my dictaphone after the incident with the stalking and talking about the situation and what had just happened, when I'm suddenly being hit by a brick. And first you're in denial. Again, you're always in denial because you can really not grasp that these things are actually taking place. I could have died easily back then.
Nej! Hvad er det, der sker? Hvad er det, der sker? Er du sindssyg, mand? Der kom bare en eller anden flyvende. Hold kæft! Det er vildt, det der foregår lige for tiden. Det var så voldsomt, så lyset faldt ud. Altså, jeg blev ramt af en eller anden, det lignede en mursten. Men den landede på en sådan flad måde, som gjorde, at roden holdt. Det lignede en mursten. Det er sådan en stor, firkantet, tung ting. Den knaldede bare ind i forruden.
Og hvad er det så, du gerne vil anmelde ved det?
Altså, jeg vil gerne anmelde, at nogen har kastet mursten op på min bil. Kan man ikke anmelde det?
Jo, det kan man godt.
Jeg synes jo, at nu har vi...
Der er ikke sket nogen skader på din bil, og du kan ikke sige, hvem det er med sikkerhed. At det er jo noget, du påstår.
Nej, jeg siger jo lige, at jeg har optaget det.
Then you also have a lot of evidence from your sort of your private property. You have a surveillance camera.
Due to these crimes.
On your private property, and you have a lot of evidence that people are entering and people are stopping at your property outside of the road and harassing you. And there is, I recall, a particular incident with a young man who approaches at night, which we can show as you describe it.
Yeah. Well, I'm on my way to bed. It's 11:45, I think, at night. And I have no clue that a man is actually snooping around outside my house. And then I'm walking around in my house. I want to go to bed. And then I realize, you forgot to turn on the light outside in the yard in front of the door into my house, front door. And then I go to my front door because as part of going to bed, just turning on the light outside, so there's light outside because it's dark. And while I turn on the light, I'm just confronted with a man on the other side of the door. And this is a very closed, everything is closed here because of the crimes I've been exposed to for many years. So everything is gated. He actually broke in because everything is locked off. So you can't really get into my property without breaking in. And then suddenly a man is standing in front of my front door in an army coat. I am petrified. And he's like, "Do you have some water? My car broke down." And I'm like, what? There's a man in the middle of the night standing in front of my front door and in a locked in a facility that's locked off, asking for water to his car. So I'm like, no, go away, and then he leaves, and I call the police. I'm terrified because, and I have no doubt also, if the front door had been open, which it often was due to my dogs, so they can go out, and he had come into my house, it would have been a disaster.
This leads us to the motive.
Yes.
Why do you think you're being targeted?
Well, there's different motives. If you read David Lawson's work, and he has been investigating these groups for a period of 10 years or more, the main goal is to kill the target. At first you discredit the target and then you take it out of the picture. And it fits with my own perception of what is going on because, for instance, the break on the front window of my car could easily have killed me. And then there's the health things, the health issues that I have. Today I have obstructive lung disease order. It's a deadly disease. I have electrohypersensitivity due to microwaves. It's a disease related to microwaves, and it's breaking down your brain actually. And I have beginning to have issues with my heart also, physical issues. I have a uterus that is completely destroyed. So all body parts are affected. And back then in the beginning, only a few months after, I started to go in and out of hospitals. So the main goal is to establish a plausible deniability, a plausible reason for me to die of something health-wise. And discredit you, and then they can take you out of the picture. That's the reasons behind the organized stalking, one of their purpose.
Regarding the motive, that what you're experiencing and other people are experiencing, this targeted individual phenomenon, and organized stalking, it didn't appear out of nowhere like yesterday. It's a sort of a continuation from the Cold War, as you explain in your in your witness testimony.
Yeah.
And this leads us to your parents.
Yeah.
And your parents' political involvement during the 70s.
Yeah. In the late 70s, my parents were being blacklisted by the American state for their political activities on the left side of the political spectrum, their involvement in the Vietnam War and demonstration against the Vietnam War, and so they were being blacklisted, as many people did back then, by the American state. And very shortly after, I myself began to have my first health issues, sleep deprivation. I couldn't sleep at night. I started to have all kind of strange phenomena going on, both physiological and also mentally. When I was trying to sleep at night, I had asthma in that period. I started to have the first sign of Magellan disease, which we're going to go dig deeper into later on. They came as small circle wounds all over my legs, scratching, very itchy. I didn't know what it was back then, but they were very itchy. But now I know because I can just Google it. And so there were many things appearing at the same time. When I turned 13, around that period, shortly after my parents became blacklisted. So I started to slowly make the puzzle, put the pieces together, and thinking this has to have something to do with my parents' political background, because I could certainly, when I became aware of this agenda, I could trace this thing going back to the Cold War due to my health issues throughout my life.
Yeah. And so today, as you write in your testimony in your book, you explain this new legislation that happened after 9/11, this anti-terror legislation.
Yeah.
and a figure in Denmark who wrote critically about it and who later got a job as a sort of director, some very high positioned job at the Danish Secret Service. Can you explain Anders Henriksen and his formulation and his criticism of the anti-terror legislation and how that relates to your case? Why that's important?
Because if you start to target people within your own nation, first of all, it will make a division amongst people, as it did during the Vietnam War, which is actually a poster model for the Cold War. If you read about the Vietnam War, it's called the Phoenix Program. Today they're calling it the Global Phoenix Program. That is also what happened in Vietnam. You divide the population into two, those who are being targeted and those who are targeting. And at the same time, you're stripping people of their legal rights. So what is it's kind of a civil war somehow, where you can suddenly be chased by numerous people, and the state does nothing, and you are completely on your own, as I have been in many years now. So that is some of the very critical issues with the anti-terror what do you call it?
Legislation.
Yeah.
And do you think that's the purpose with the war on terror, that we have some secret services in the West who perhaps describes terrorists in a different way than I think most normal people would. It's not someone in the Middle East, perhaps. No. It's actually a very interesting documentary or a piece of video that we can show people is this person, Anders Henriksen. He actually defines a new phenomenon or a new definition on extremism, which sort of aligns with the war on terrorism. And it's called anti-government extremists, which is completely new, completely made up by the Secret Service, and it is essentially someone who is critical of the government.
For første gang så er ekstremisme vendt mod myndigheder og myndighedspersoner beskrevet i PET's årlige vurdering af terrortrusler mod Danmark. Og den trussel er ifølge PET lige nu større end for eksempel terror fra venstreekstremister. Og det skyldes ikke mindst udbredelsen af konspirationsteorier, for eksempel i forbindelse med coronapandemien.
Then you have to ask yourself, what is a national security risk? And now it starts to be very broad. And that is also what I've been talking about over in the United States for many years. The definition of a national security risk is very broad. And that's why, as they wrote, a politician named Jim Gust, he said 70% of the people could actually fit into this category of being a national security risk. So the narrative about Islam is only, as I see it, a way to sell this whole idea of anti-terror legislations, and the fact that we have people who are a threat to national security within our own borders. It's a terrible development.
This leads us to the question of the purpose of our surveillance society today. And a very well-known program administered under the CIA called MKUltra. Could you provide a historical backdrop on MKUltra?
MKUltra began during the Cold War, on the conflict between East and West in the 50s. And you said yourself, it is in relation to the surveillance society, the government's need of controlling the population. And how can we control the population even more to avoid, that is one of the nice purpose, this conflict between people. So we are actually now entering sort of a totalitarian thought process. How can we avoid conflict between people? And that governments have always tried to do that, to control the population. So they began to make experimentations on people using electricity, electrodes, as a way to. We know when you have an EEG made, you can actually measure what is going inside, what is happening inside the brain. This is much more advanced when you look at MK Ultra today. They can actually wirelessly. Now we're talking about the wireless society, access our force. Recently, Elon Musk came with a brain chip.
Yeah, Neuralink.
That's kind of a result of this development that started with MK Ultra. How can we control how people think? And if they think in a way we don't like, national security, we can target these people. And now we are into what is called neural weapons, and make them either submit to our policy, or we can even take them out of the picture. And all of this is a war strategy that grew out of the Cold War and the government's need for population control.
Yeah.
So that is MK Ultra, and that is what we see today.
Could you explain, like, what kind of what condition makes you why are you admitted to the hospital in the first place? What kind of circumstances, health circumstances?
In the beginning, shortly after, a few months after I was being subjected to organized stalking, I started to go in and out of hospitals with lung issues, and very severe lung issues. And then I started to, when I realized I had this, because I began to have Morgellons, and this is fibers coming out of your skin. In my case, I can also take them out of, not always, but sometimes when I'm being very affected by these frequencies, I can also take them out of my eyes. And then I started to have, also through my digestion system, things started to come out. And I took them under the microscope, and I realized this is nanotechnology. You are coming out of your digestion system. And these technologies, they are mainly located in your brain, your lungs, and your spine. So that is how they make the connection when you talk about mind control between the brain and what is called neural weapons, the body, through the central nervous system. So, yeah, sorry, I lost the question.
Yeah, and you've documented, you bought a microscope, and you've documented that you have very interesting things that sort of the neuroscale, like under the microscope, and you also have what you describe as a fiber optic sort of network.
Yeah, Morgellons.
Yeah, in the body.
And these technologies are made as part of this MK Ultra, this development, this surveillance society, this wireless society, because it makes it possible for them to contact the human body through these technologies that you have already integrated, as you said yourself, as a fiber optic network in your body. So they are made for this connection, this wireless connection, as any other hard drive. And then you have what is called RFID, which is as in short for radio frequencies identification, just as a phone number or as a MAC address to your computer, or maybe even as a code to your door lock. You can actually, through this code, access this system inside the human body, specifically targeting a person and this technology. Because that a lot of these things could not exist without the help of people being physical present. For instance, going inside your house. How did I get these technologies inside my body? I already talked about the food that had been tampered with early back in 2016. So you have to have this technology in your body, and you can get it through oral, through the food. You can inhale it. And then you can even have it injected. So you're very dependent on people on the ground. You cannot just sit and do these things. Also, I think there have to be some kind of agreement between the nation and the state and the people who are targeting you.
Yeah.
You cannot just target people randomly worldwide. There's we talked about the secret services earlier, and there have to be kind of
an
agreement between them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are very dependent both on the terror and the stalking and the surveillance, but also you have to have a lot of physical things done. And one is to activate these technologies that I have in my body with an interrogator. It's called an interrogator. It can be a phone. I'm not quite sure what they use. I've seen them using phones, but it can also be other devices, but it's called an interrogator, I think. And it can contact these devices just as if you were having a MAC address to a computer, or you were having a phone number to a phone, or you were having a code to your car lock or your door lock. You can access this system of technologies through these RF identification numbers.
And to make it concrete for people, if we take one instance that I remember you told me about, then you were at the library, and then someone, I think you described him as sort of homeless, looked kind of ragged, and he was walking around with his cell phone, just like this one, and then he pushed a button or something on his cell phone, and you experienced this zapping phenomenon as you describe it.
I don't remember this precise incident you're referring to, but this is my daily life. There's a reason why they stalk me. It's not just to stalk me. There's a purpose, and the purpose is I'm being zapped. And if you read about RFID, you will realize that you actually have to activate the technology. That's what I call zapping. So they activate the technology, and then you can wirelessly access this technology inside the human body. And this is, we have talked about organized stalking, but the violation of the human body and the human mind and soul and privacy, this is the thing. This is the biggest violation. I don't think we have ever seen anything ever in the world as violating. Meaning people can access technology inside my body, and they can harm me through this technology, and they do it on a daily basis. That's why I have electrohypersensitivity. That's why I have electrohypersensitivity. That's why I have lungs that are destroyed. That's why I have a heart who's also showing signs of being destroyed. That's why I have a uterus that's destroyed. What are the odds? How can you have all these different body parts just going down one after one? If there's something other is at stake here, and that is the neurotechnology, and that is, for me, it is for other people, it is easy to see these crimes that are committed to me when we talk about organized stalking. But the biggest issue of all is this access to the human body. I mean, how in the world do they dare to do that?
Yeah.
I am being totally... If you have destroyed lungs, you can maybe realize that this comes with a price. Yeah, you are being physically tortured. and that is why you have destroyed lungs. So it's a violation of the human body in a way we have never ever seen before, and it's done covertly because they don't want the general population to know. Because this is a crime, and it's on a state level, even on an international level, because this is related to the war on terror and this international network of secret services working together. I don't want to blame the secret service only, because sometimes I'm actually doubting who is doing what, and why am I doubting sometimes who is behind what? Because if it was the secret service, if it was some kind of legit institution, I would have expect that I wouldn't be able to make all this documentation. If they really wanted to kill me, they could just take me out of the game. I could die of a heart attack easily. So why this torture? And why? And not only the torture. Why am I able to present all this evidence of these technologies, Magellan's new technologies, and even I can even show frequencies coming from my body now.
Så når jeg går ned under lungerne, hvis der er ingen problemer. Og til lunger og hjerte. Det er bare få lungerne over det hele. Prøv at lægge mig væk fra den, ikke? Så det kommer altså fra det, min krop, de her signaler her. Går jeg ned under lungerne. Sådan. Og det er jo hele regionen, kan man godt se. Bare varmt.
All this happened after 5G. The issues with Magellan's and nanotechnologies happened after 5G. I'm not saying it's not the state, because it's all part of a development. But the organized stalking, or what you call paramilitary troops, also plays a big part in that, because they, like it was like they used to do under the Cold War, we had to stay behind. They do the very, very illegal stuff. You have organized crime and you have paramilitary troops to do the very, very criminal stuff, so that you can never point your finger at the state. It's kind of a hybrid war, where a lot of people are playing together as kind of wheels in a system. It's all the same, but different people do different parts. I'm not sure who is targeting my body with these directed energy weapons, or maybe more frequencies, wireless signals, when I'm talking about 5G. Because 5G, even Elon Musk admits that Starlink plays a big part in this war on terror and surveillance society. So, and that is also my own experience. All this began, it exploded with the rollout of 5G. It exploded. And I quickly after put my house for sale, because this house is kind of an invisible prison, electromagnetic prison. We already had a lot of issues with your technologies. Everything we have been having issues with everything, both the computer and the camera and all that stuff. This is an electromagnetic hellhole, especially when I'm at home alone, which I'm often, most of the time. So I'm not quite sure where to point my finger to say this is them doing that, this is them doing that, because it's covert. But they are part of the same agenda, they're part of the same system, they're part of this development since the Cold War, and now we have the war on terror. But something is like connected to this, the war on terror, and something is so criminal. So it kind of, it's like there's two tracks. one is the One Tower, and the other is organized stalking. And now we're getting into the thing about the Freemasons, because they play a huge part too in all of this. They are the deep state, if you see it like that. If you see of this triangle structure behind the democracy, we have to look at the Freemasons and these elite groups running this agenda behind the scene, behind democracy.
This leads me to a document that you found called, can you remember the title?
Analysis and Assessments of Gateway Processes. And this is a document I was seeking for a connection between my health issues and these frequencies that I was trying to show people I was affected by already back in 2018. And because I had realized that since I was a child, since my parents were blacklisted by the United States, I started to have what do you say, a string?
Yeah.
You say a string of health issues, a line of health issues that go all the way back to when I was 13. And one of the major issues I had was back in 1997, where I was having, first of all, my right eye. I started to have issues with my right eye. It was kind of stopped. And then I started to have, that was back in 97. And then late 97, I started to have energy issues with my body. And they resulted in me breaking down, fainting, how do you say, passing out, and being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, waking up in the hospital, but everything just happened spontaneously. And at the hospital, I had what is called a Kundalini awakening. And a Kundalini awakening is the Kundalini system in the body that is most known from Eastern philosophy, yoga, meditation, that we have an energy system inside our body, connecting the brain with the spine and the body, and chakras here and in the throat and the heart and so forth. And so I started to have Kundalini symptoms. I didn't know what it was back then, but one of my friends had rushed to the hospital and he said, "You have a Kundalini awakening." And I was like, what is going on? I just fainted and was rushed to the hospital in a state of being unconscious. And so this incident stuck in my mind as being very, very peculiar. And after that, I started to have a lot of anxiety issues after the Kundalini awakening. I started to have thought processes where I was like, what is this? I just couldn't, things were happening inside my mind where I was like, what is going on? This has nothing to do with me. I started to have impulses that I couldn't identify with. For instance, if I was in a high building, I could have the impulse to throw myself out from the building. And all of this came like out of the blue after this Kundalini awakening. So I knew when I was being hit by organized stalking, and later on in 2018 began to have the same issues that I've been dealing with throughout my life. I knew that there's a connection here. And this has been a process and an investigation. And then I started to look for this connection between Kundalini and these frequency awakenings. And more or less all the internet is like vacuum, does nothing. I could find old websites that didn't really work anymore, were taken down. So in the end, I was almost giving up. And then I went to a website which has nothing to do with Kundalini, but it has something to do with quantum physics. And there was a document, and I was so tired, I was just giving up. And I was like, well, anyway, you might as well download these documents. And one of these documents is two. One of them were analysis and assessments of gateway processes. It's an American military document describing the connection between Kundalini and frequencies, how you can actually, through the use of acoustic weapons, release a physiological Kundalini in the body. And they say, in the paper, they say it can be done hypothetically within the range of 47 hertz, which is a state of meditation, deep meditation. And then a month or two months later, something told me inside my head, you have to find because after I had this breakdown in 1997, I had this severe anxiety. So at one point in 2001, I contacted a psychiatrist due to anxiety issues, and he gave me some medication for these issues with anxiety. And he also had some EEG tests done on me in that connection. And these documents I actually have. And in these documents, they find some abnormal findings in the range of 47 hertz. So if you put these two things together, the fact that I found this document where they say you can actually release a Kundalini in the range of 47 hertz, and the fact that I have evidence that in that period when I had my Kundalini, they could measure abnormal brain activities in the range of 47 hertz. That was absolutely mind-blowing, and my best evidence ever that I'm being subjected to these covert secret experiments. So, but also, and that leads me to the CIA, because now we're going into all of these things called the paranormal experimentation, because analysis and assessments of gateway processes is when you talk about the gateway, a door into something else, a deeper layer of the mind. And now we're getting into CIA and their connection to the occult world. We earlier talked about the Freemasons, but parapsychology and CIA, we all know they have a fascination for parapsychology. And that is interlinked with the occult world. And so now we're getting deep down in this agenda in the world, which is not only the war on terror and surveillance and population control. There's also some religious motive or maybe even satanic motive for this agenda. And that is,
And an example of something that looks quite occult when you showed it to me the first time is something that your dog excreted.
Yeah. That is very serious. When they roll out 5G back in 2020, the first who were actually most affected about it was my animals. Especially one of my dogs.
Yeah, you have 2 dogs.
I have 2 dogs. Yeah. And then later on, what they have done to him, they can't do on me. And that is what I'm exposed to today. Neurotechnologies, that is. And Morgellons. And he actually have some very, very serious issue. And one day, that is back in early 2021, I woke up and I could see he was running around during the night being very, very restless. And then in the morning I came out and I could see a trail of blood going all the way to the bathroom. And out there I found a little pool of blood. And in that, something, I couldn't read it because it was very tiny, but there was something in that that I picked up and later put under the microscope, and that is mind-boggling, and an example of the occult world. And actually, I know through a guy, an independent researcher, German researcher called Harald Krautsweiler, that the spider that you can see on this, it looks like not an embryo, but like almost an eggshell, half an eggshell. And attached to that eggshell is a spider. And the spider is actually the symbol, as far as I understood it, listening to Harald Krautsweiler, on the Freemasons and this occult world.
Yeah.
So now it's getting really occult.
Yeah. And then there is something called the 27 Club.
The 27 Club. The 27 Club is James Joplin, Jim Morrison, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, and probably also others. The 27 Club, they got their name because they all died at the age of 27. But now we're getting into the occult world and the fascination for numbers and mathematics and all this stuff. And I have been investigating also in that part, and then I realized that the 27 Club, they all died at the age of 27, these young musicians, and that is why it's called the 27 Club. Especially Jim Morrison, there's a lot of controversy about how he died, but most of them died of drug addiction.
And Amy Winehouse as well.
She died of drugs.
Yeah.
But there's also controversies.
Yeah, there was the neighbor when the neighbor was interviewed by the police. Then the neighbor to Amy Winehouse said that he or she heard screaming at night when she died. The night she died.
Okay.
And that was unusual from coming from her.
Yeah. Anyway, we can't say that for sure, any of it, but we can say for sure they all died at the age of 27.
Yeah.
And if you take the fascination of number and the occult world, and you divide 9 with 3, 9, 18, 27, you have 3 9s.
Yeah.
And if you start to Google the 3 9s, you will, at least in Denmark, not if you do it in English, but in Denmark, you will very quickly get books of the Satanic Bible and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And now I remember why I brought the 27 Club up. In your witness testimony, you describe something that feels very improbable, at least to me, and that was as far as I remember, your parents, both your parents, your mom and your dad, almost died on subsequently your brother's birthday and your birthday. Can you explain that further?
That was back in 1999. 999. Me and my brother are both born in September, and with a week in between. And on his birthday in the September 1999, my mother had a car accident on the highway where she was driving into I don't know what you call a roadblock.
Yeah.
A roadblock.
Yeah.
And the car was completely destroyed. And somehow, like when I was being hit with the brick, she survived this accident. And then a week later, it's my birthday, and my stepfather, he dies then.
Oh, he died.
And you can hear on the accident with my mother, she should have died on my brother's birthday. My father dies on my birthday in 1999. All sudden death.
Yeah. And it sounds like, looking from the outside, it's quite a coincidence that these events happen on your birthday and your brother's birthday.
I find it I find
peculiar. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If I just have to finish this, because there's the war on terror and then there's the occult war. And the fact is that I have a blood type called rhesus negative O. And I know by investigating that the negative rhesus negative blood type is something that they're fascinated about and that will get you targeted. Yeah. And so that's another thing I think it's worth mentioning, because why have they been putting me through the gateway? Why have they been giving me a Kundalini? Why are they so interesting in this paranormal experimentation on me? There has to be a reason for that. Yeah. If they just want to kill me, they could just kill me.
Okay, if we move away from the occult for a moment and go back to On Track and the war on terror. Maybe it is appropriate here at the end of this interview to look at the bigger picture in all this and how this relates to a very recent event that happened worldwide on a large scale, and that was COVID-19. And what are your thoughts on COVID-19 and how that relates to your story?
Due to what I know today, the fact that they want to vaccinate the world population is terrifying. Because I know what it is to live with artificial life inside of your body. Many people have been talking about the vaccines as being a way of getting nanotechnology into the body. And as part of this agenda, this Operation Mind Control, neo weapons, stuff like that. And I can also see here that many people who have been having health issues after they were injected with COVID-19 is completely similar to mine. Somebody is describing electricity going through their body, or in their brain. Somebody's talking about being extremely tired. Somebody's talking about respiratory issues. All of the issues that I know so well since 2017. So there are many, many cases, and I even talked to a social worker recently who told me that many of these people are getting pensions. And you never hear about it in the media. Why is that?
So people who've gotten the COVID-19 mRNA injection, they are getting pensions.
If they have side effects, severe side effects, as some of I already mentioned some of them. So there's kind of parallel there to my own health issues, and I also consider myself as a prototype. You don't have all these people participating in the organized stalking, targeting one woman. There's a reason why they're there.
Yeah.
And that is because they're part of an agenda, a totalitarian agenda, as far as I know, due to my research and my own experiences. But if I have to end this with a positive ending, because I don't want to be, I believe in hope. We must never lose hope. And there is quite a lot of hope when I look at my own example, because I'm kind of a prototype, and I'm also kind of an antenna, or as somebody says, the canary in the coal mine. So when I move around, I can see what is affecting my body. There's a zapping that is done by numerous people participating in the organized stalking. Well, if you unarm them, that would be one big relief. And then there is the rollout of 5G, which can be very hard to manage, but at least we still have access to the land-based system, which this technology depends so much upon. So do we need 5G? Why don't we have these debates anymore? In the old days, when we were having the conflict between East and West, the issue were a nuclear war. And what did they do? They talked together. They sat around a table and they talked together. They negotiated, and they started to when you say when you take when you arm down,
disarmor,
yeah. And we have to do the same now, because these wireless signals are a big issue, but they are not something. It's not that something that God intended. So therefore, we can take it down again. And I know that if we don't have all this land-based equipment, I doubt we have any issues at all as a human species. So that's what I would like to say. Well, just take it down again. It's not who have decided that we have to have this whole wireless system and live our social life on the internet and stuff like that, the way people live today, we can easily go back to old-fashioned way of being together and start to disarm.